Hey folks, how you doing out there? So let's go ahead and get a couple of things done here. And bandwidth here is going to suck today. Hate to say it, but that's going to be the way things are. We got a lot of people down here with flags, with the whole thing going on. A lot of people eating up the bandwidth on the tower that's downtown right now. So I'm going to go ahead and keep working to try and improve my bandwidth some. Well, let's admit it, we are not going to get the kind of bandwidth I'm hoping for. Welcome to trying to make things happen on a moment's notice. So what you got back behind me here is our Capitol steps. Let's go ahead and just do it this way. I'm hoping that the bandwidth is going through. I know the feedback I'm getting back on this side is really kind of shoddy. So I can't really know what's going on your end. Best I can do, yes, please hit the like button. Thank you, Arif. Thank you for tuning in from Liberia. Yeah, James Doe. Not sure those are necessarily welcome here, but we got that going on. And thank you, Lana and Brandy. Thank you all for showing up today. So I'm doing the casual thing. You know what? Let me go ahead and do something here because I want to go ahead and take this background off. That's probably going to save me a lot of grief because I got this friggin' virtual background thing going on in a place where I simply do not have the virtual background, the bandwidth in order to do all of that. There we go. Much better. Okay, so you see back behind me there, we got the Capitol Steps building. We got a large group that's gathering here on this side of the park. Yep, see them all, see them all. Yeah. Okay, so, yeah, James, thanks for tuning in, Mike. So, abortion rights in the United States. Now, the Supreme Court took a leap of faith, or not, depending on how you want to look at it, and said, give it back to the states. What that means to the rest of the U.S., particularly the states and 13 that all had trigger laws in preparation for this, including places like Kansas, yes, Kansas, and Idaho being one of them. Idaho earlier today, 10 o'clock this morning, Idaho actually went through and heard arguments for the legalization, or not so much for the legalization, but for the stay on the laws here in the state of Idaho. Okay. Now, when it went through that process, we spent an hour listening to arguments today. Yeah, and there's a couple things that go on with that. Planned Parenthood had the opening arguments. Gentlemen got in, made their point, talked for about 30 minutes, absolutely nailed every key point in the state of Idaho's constitution about the right to bodily autonomy and how that the state constitution, Idaho's state constitution, fully enshrined the right to bodily autonomy here in the state of Idaho. Nailed it, nailed it, and nailed it again. It's promptly turned around and you ended up with counter arguments from not just one, which was the state AG's office, not just two, but the legislators actually brought in a third team. Two of those were private, by the way, at a cost of $750 an hour in order to argue on behalf of what, at this point, I'm going to call an unconstitutional law. Talk about a waste of money. Right? State attorney didn't say. If it's all this, I get why they tasked one of the women on the AG's staff to argue. Probably not their best move, though. She did not sound confident in her statements. Didn't sound like she even wanted to say what she had to say from a legal standpoint as far as the arguments that were prepared for her going into the hearing, especially with questions that the judges were asking immediately following on what was going on. So, yeah. Now, I'll go ahead and post in the links for this later on. You know what? The link to that particular, good, thank you. The link to today's session won't be available till tomorrow once it goes into the judiciary archives. However, it is permanent record now, so you will be able to watch those arguments in the Supreme Court of the state of Idaho today for the stay of the implementation of Idaho's abortion laws in perpetuity. Yay, transparency. And as much as I hate to say it, I honestly got to give kudos to the Idaho Freedom Foundation, despite what obnoxious little brats they are, in their conduct in making sure that, yes, those records are now done in perpetuity with Idaho's public radio station. So you'll be able to see Idaho in session, legislative, senatorial, executive, judiciary in perpetuity. Any session, clear back to, what was it, 10 years ago when they started, 2005, 2006. Anyway, back when Idaho Freedom Foundation was actually an okay organization as composed. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to catch some flack for mentioning them, but yes. So, again, back to Idaho's situation. Now, yesterday, Department of Justice, which is funny because of all 13 of the states with trigger laws, Eric Garland of the U.S. Department of Justice decided that Idaho was the one they wanted to sue regarding our abortion laws, particularly with regards to the limitations, and the qualifications and whether or not it met the standards under whatever bill it was Biden signed about the Emergency Maternity Care Act, whatever it was. So yesterday they announced that the Department of Justice is suing in federal court. As it's federal agency, federal Department of Justice suing this state of Idaho, claiming supremacy clause. Okay. Yeah. Now, and this is interesting because here's the thing. If the arguments heard today, particularly the arguments presented by Planned Parenthood, arguing that the Idaho state constitution has enshrined in itself the right to self-determination, the right to bodily autonomy in perpetuity, my body, my choice. If that is indeed enshrined in the Idaho state constitution, as claimed by Planned Parenthood's lawyer, then the law in and of itself is already null and void by Idaho's, yeah, James, America suing itself. That's how American lawyers make money. America suing itself, the state suing the feds suing the states, nonprofits suing the states, nonprofits suing the Fed. Yes, that lawyers run America, one suit at a time. So looking at that, if the Supreme Court of the state of Idaho comes back with a ruling stating that by the Idaho state constitution, the ban on abortion is indeed unconstitutional, which is what the Supreme Court did. It said, throw it back on the states and the state constitutions. The power reserved unto the people, yes, that is not only in the U.S. Constitution, it's also in the Idaho state constitution. The power reserved to the people, protect the rights of the people, is one of those things that will continue to exist in the Idaho state constitution. If it is indeed enshrined and the Supreme Court of the state of Idaho agrees that it is indeed enshrined, the suit by Eric Garland is null and void, right? The law is unconstitutional by the state of Idaho's constitution. Eric Garland has no suit. The Department of Justice has no suit. That's going to be interesting, particularly seeing as how there's going to be an awful lot of money involved on all sides regarding that suit. So, Department of Justice yesterday announced the suit. This morning, we heard arguments. Yesterday was also Tuesday. Kansas. Actually, that's interesting because if you take a look at it and you break it down, there is an argument that each one of the reservations, being autonomous tribal zones, have their own constitutions as well on top of and beyond. So, yeah, you're looking at 50 states plus the reservation. Well, I shouldn't say reservations, plus the tribes. Each individual tribe has their own constitution by which they operate on, conduct operations basis. So 50 states plus the tribes plus the one U.S. Constitution overall. And arguably, we're even working under both the UN Constitution as well as some other weird ones. Won't get into that because that really is beyond my particular knowledge. But yeah, so when we look at that and we take a look at what's going on, okay, everybody's getting ready to move across the street to where the rally and speech are actually going to be. Now, we have several candidates who will be talking today. I am not one of them. They filled the docket full with several of our Democrats running here in the state, including one of my opponents, Kaylee. Yes. I'm going to go ahead and give her a shout out. Yes, Kaylee, the Democratic congressional candidate for District 1 in the state of Idaho. My Democratic opponent, one of those in the three-way race, will be speaking here today on the Capitol steps, along with several others, including the Democrat candidate for lieutenant governor and some of the other positions as well. I don't know whether or not David Roth will be here representing from the Senate or whether or not they were able to get any of the others here. But yeah, it's a full doc. So you get to listen to some of those speeches in the background while I'm chatting with you. Anyway, Kansas, yesterday in their primary, they had a ballot initiative, a referendum for a change in the Kansas state constitution. Okay. It got slapped down. Now, Kansas is a red state. Not quite as red as Idaho, but still a red state. Kansas slapped it down. You know, 2/3 of the vote went to protecting abortion access in the state of Kansas. A red state, mind you. Kansas legislature wanted a complete ban or whatever it was they wanted, whatever it was they were asking for. Constitutions, articles of incorporation, every corporation, state, country, etc. has one. You know, arguably all the parties in the U.S. have a constitution, bylaws, constitution. Gets a little fuzzy sometimes. The Federalists. You can thank the Federalists for that, James. The reason why is because the Federalists didn't believe in a central government. They believed in a confederation, a federation of states with a central organizing point in order to settle the disputes between the states while creating a common currency and bond between the states, a common culture, a common society, which is why we got 50 states. The idea was, you know, each individual state was its own entity, but you were allowed to travel. You were able to do all of those things that Eleanor Roosevelt created in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1940. Thank you, Dolores. Thank you for showing up. You know, Kansas, closest state for women, people to travel, right? Brandy, aren't you in Arkansas or Alabama? One of the, yeah. Southern state, Kansas, now the closest as far as 13 states with trigger laws. Idaho being the one in the Pacific Northwest, surrounded by states where abortion is, of course, legal. Idaho is the only one where the trigger law, it's still legal, folks. It's still legal until 23rd for one of the laws and the 25th for the other. Yes. But right now, for some of the southern states, like Brandy lives in Arkansas. Kansas is currently the closest place for Arkansas for women who are living in Arkansas. See my green bandana here, green bandana. It's the color green. Green, for whatever reason, was the number that was the color for abortion rights access. That's the color they wanted to go to show unity today. Yes. I support reproductive rights. I support bodily autonomy, all that. Yes. So yes, I am wearing green, even though I know, this really is an opinion piece. Okay. I'm talking news. I'm talking national news. And that said, I am speaking from my point of view. I am reflecting my views on the laws, the situation. You got other sources for the facts, right? Yes, I want to include facts. I want to make sure this is accurate for you. I want to make sure it's accurate for me. I like it when I get called out. The reason why is because I do not know everything. I don't. So, if I make a factual mistake, please correct me. Now, from what's going on here in the state of Idaho, from what's going on across the nation with regards to, yes, I'm doing this from a libertarian perspective. Oh, that's right. That is me. Bodily autonomy. It's a key platform. Regardless of what else goes on, bodily autonomy is a human right. It is the natural right, the right to my body, my choice, make my personal decisions. For good or bad, I bear the consequences of my own decisions. And as long as I am not hurting anyone else with my decisions, directly hurting anyone else with my decisions, as long as I'm not in violation of another's consent with my decisions, I should be allowed to make my choices and accept the consequences of my actions. I shouldn't have to worry about whether or not a choice I make regarding me, myself, and I is illegal. Now, that's full spectrum issues, folks. I mean, full spectrum. If I were a woman, if I had a uterus, if it was one of those situations where it might be in my best interest, without any other understanding, that is a decision for me to make. My body, my choice, my uterus. Anyway, you get the idea. Yeah, I know I'm going to catch flack from an awful lot of people out there saying, but you're a guy, you really, well, you want the choice. I want to make sure you have the choice as a woman, as someone with the uterus, as someone capable of producing children. Regardless of self-identity. No, I can't. I'm not actually equipped for it. And believe me, there are days I am honestly very, very happy that is not something, that is not a decision I will ever have to make. Honestly, especially at this late date in my age. Hopefully, I'm not in a position where I'm being so irresponsible with my parts that I create a situation in somebody who, anyway, beyond the point. Okay, Kansas shot down a constitutional amendment trying to shut down abortion access in the state of Kansas. Okay, here we are in the state of Idaho. We heard arguments this morning. Department of Justice yesterday announced that they were suing the state of Idaho based on the law. Now, there are an awful lot of moving parts. Yeah, and this is one of the big ones, Brandy. This is absolutely huge. Okay, one of the big arguments that they keep trying to shove down our throats is late-term abortions. Late-term abortions. There are less than 2% of the abortions, in the United States are late-term abortions, and they're specifically because of this situation. Uh, uh, Birth defects. The birth defects that show up, the heartbeat, the brain, a number of other things that go on. Now, 8 months pregnant, okay, checkup, no heartbeat. Yeah, there's a process. Now, in some states, they call this process an abortion. In other states, it's a different term. For legal reasons, for medical reasons, whatever. We've seen the discussions back and forth on the internet. Don't tease me with a good time, James. Do not tease me with a good time. And this is a family issue. But when we go back to this issue here, birth defects, things that occur in the process of delivery, these 2% of late-term abortions, 7th, 8th, 9th month, where ideally, you could carry a child to 7 months and the child would be viable. Okay, yet here we are, 6,000 abortions a year in the United States happen because of this specific situation. Quality of life, birth defects, whether it's fetal alcohol syndrome, whether it's heart defects, brain defects, a number of different things. All of these are all things that contribute to emergencies for the late term. Okay, we're not going in and dissecting viable fetuses at 7, 8, and 9 months, which is one of those things why the big argument is always so problematic. And this is one of those things. She lives in Missouri. Missouri is one of those states, much like Idaho, that's currently working on laws to prevent, for lack of a better term, abortion tourism. Okay, they want to be able to prevent you from being able to travel out of state for the purpose of abortion. Okay, if they discover you're pregnant, okay, they're trying to write laws that allow the state to take possession of your child while it is still in your womb and deny access, deny travel, deny interstate travel. 27 weeks. That is on the edge of viable. Glad they both survived. Believe me, very glad. But 27 is premature, and viability at 27 weeks in previous years would have been iffy. The argument is if it has a heartbeat. Well, cognitive function isn't even recognized in fetus until 24 weeks, 27 weeks. In between 24 and 27, again, superhuman efforts, as mentioned by Brandy, superhuman efforts, in order to facilitate life for premature children. How far can you go with that? Now, you hear the cheering in the background. Yeah. They're doing good. They're getting the word out, getting everything said that needs to be said. I love her statement back there. Violating the law of the land. Was the legislation a violation of the law of the land? Was the There we go. No, she's nailing it. You're right. James, one of the things, similar argument for test tube babies. This is the IVF, the in vitro fertilization. Whether or not the fetus is viable. I think some state even went so far as to claim, that you can now have embryos. If you went into a fertility clinic and you had embryos created from you and your wife, and they are stuck in the freezer waiting for future use, you can actually claim them as dependents in some states now. I mean, talk about incentivizing, IVF. But yeah, this is one of those things. The test tube babies, the IVF, the ability to incubate outside of the womb in order to preserve. We destroy something like 2 million IVF, fetuses, embryos created for IVF insertion, 2 million a year. Okay, that's a lot. But there's an awful lot of people who don't consider them life. There's actually a green pro-life movement, which is actually anti-IVF, anti-gestational carrier, because it's not a natural conception. It's not a natural birth. It's not a natural. Yes, we actually got that movement. It is alive in the United States, and it is actively involved in many of these anti-abortion rights activism. Now, the early births, as far as creating neurodiversity in the people who experience, premature birth, autism, seizures, number of other things, all part of the process. And it's one of those things where it comes back to a quality of life decision. So again, Idaho is not the only one with a trigger law. Okay, there are already 3 states, I believe, where the trigger law went into effect the instant the ruling came down. Idaho is one of those that had the 30 days based on the filing of Dobbs officially with the clerk. We're having arguments. We are continuing to pursue this. Now, thing is there is no party. There is no party, national, I should say. There is no national party that is universally recognized in all 50 states that is. It's an interesting argument, but I don't think we have that yet, James. I do not think we have that yet. Simply because of the amount of burden it places upon the system, the amount of burden it places upon the community. And I'll actually get into that in a little bit with regards to natural rights, particularly as they refer to negative rights or the mind your own business rights, or the positive rights / government dole rights. Yes, I realize that's confusing to an awful lot of people. The reason why is because Rothbard and Mises, statements as far as positive and negative rights aren't necessarily intuitive, are they, folks? Yeah. So where was I, folks? Similar arguments, test tubes. Now, I said the 4 major parties. Okay. The Libertarians, the Greens, the Republicans, the Democrats. Is an issue with neurodiversity and the way it expresses itself across a number of things. A number of people, different ages, traumatic brain injuries that cause it, premature birth that causes it. And that's interesting. We could dispense with the debate if we acknowledge natural law and its inherent natural rights. Okay. The Republicans, right now in the state of Idaho, I don't necessarily know the national platform, but in the state of Idaho, the platform for the Republicans is 100% forced birth, no exceptions, even for the purpose of saving the life of the mother. Okay, now if that's particular approach that Garrick has decided to use against the state of Idaho, he's premature. Reason why is because we haven't gotten into a January session where the Republican supermajority, and yes, because all of this came out after the eligibility in order to register to run for office in the state of Idaho, okay, we will have a Republican supermajority in the Idaho legislature in both houses, again, simply because many of those Republicans went unchallenged, period, okay? They went unchallenged. As a result, when that supermajority takes control in January, when their next session starts, the policy of the state, unless the Supreme Court of the state of Idaho rules that this is unconstitutional, mind you, you will see a zero tolerance abortion ban in the state of Idaho. Okay. Now, this is one of these things. Okay. Now, the downside of natural law. Okay. The downside of natural law can't coerce, ban, incentivize, or disincentivize any sort of morality. Okay. Now, libertarians, one of the things an awful lot of us, an awful lot of libertarians before the Reno Reset, mind you, believed there are an awful lot of pro-life libertarians. The rule, though, is to keep the state out of the process. Okay? What this is a pro-choice, choose life emphasis where you support organizations that incentivize women to proceed with a full term and the live birth. Okay? Not coercion, not violence of the state, but taking human action to incentivize women to continue through with their pregnancy. Whether that's by compensation, providing aid, providing moral support and counseling, regardless. Now, yes, there are some out there that have been operating in that way with some shady tactics. Yes, they have. They've been less than honest with many of the clients who have gone searching them out. They've been harassing several of the clients that have been searching them out. They've actually been using coercive techniques rather than incentivized techniques in order to force a decision, in order to manipulate, in order to achieve consent. I think you're going a little bit far with this, James. Reason why is because natural law is based on Thomas Aquinas. Okay, now Thomas Aquinas was a Catholic monk. He was a friar in Italy. Anyway, the entire idea behind natural law was that the individual human action, the individual human right, the negative right, mind you, is insurmountable. And this goes back to Mike's point on we can dispense with the debate. Okay. And this is one of the problems with the nature of the founding documents of the United States. Okay, the original Declaration of Independence was written under the concept of natural law. The idea that all men are created equal with a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, the Idaho State Constitution goes one further. Right to life, liberty, right to acquire property, and some other things. Now, these are all negative rights, basically meaning that as long as somebody is minding their own business and doing this of their own accord or working consensually with partners in order to achieve this collection, this massive wealth, without violating the rights of others, without extortion, exploitation, etc., and so forth, okay, they can do it however they see fit. Where the problem is when that acquisition of wealth is through the exploitation, non-consensual, uninformed exploitation of others. Now, we can argue back and forth at what point that went down, but honestly, it went down back in 1889, 13 years after the Declaration of Independence was written. Reason why is because natural law was not written into the Constitution of the United States. Matter of fact, natural law wasn't even introduced into the Constitution of the United States, written in 1889. James Madison, Hamilton, and the rest of them. They didn't create the Constitution with the idea of natural law. They created the Constitution under the concept of the general welfare of the people, the right of the ruling class to decide for the people what is best for the people. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a greater nation, and for the general welfare of the people. Okay. When they created the Constitution of the United States, they changed their founding documents from one of natural law to one of collectivism, one of the greater good. Our Constitution was written with the concept of utilitarianism, in that it was okay for some to suffer as long as the greater good was maintained and created. Now, fortunately, our Federalists stepped in and insisted on the Bill of Rights. Bill of Rights reintroduced natural law into the Constitution of the United States with the 9th and 10th Amendments. Yeah, and I agree with you, James. How does pro-life work when the insistence is going to kill both the woman and the child? That's because at that point it's no longer pro-life, it's eugenics. And that's a completely different discussion. Despite several of the people who are watching me now understand my opinion that forced birth is proto-eugenics. We are one stage away from going full eugenics and determining that some people in the United States have no right to procreate. That's next up, folks. Forced antinatalism. Which is one of the reasons why winning the fight right now, winning the fight on reproductive rights, winning the fight on making sure that the state stays out of reproductive rights, is so important. The right to choose an abortion right now is key to the right to choosing life later on, to choosing to have a child later on. Our ability to keep the state out of reproductive rights, any level, any way, any shape, any form, prevents the eugenics programs that were rampant in U.S. policy, clear up into the 1970s. Okay? Yes, for those of you who like to say, but no, we weren't like the Nazis in exterminating. Shut up. Most of you who listen to me know better already. We were practicing eugenics in Bureau of Indian Affairs medical clinics clear up into the 1970s. California was practicing eugenics clear up until 2010 in California prisons. Forced antinatalism, forced sterilizations, criminal, sterilizations in prisons. Yes. We finally got rid of that. Now we're back at the stage proto-eugenics, again, ready to start the cycle again. And this is why it needs to die right here, right now. And if Idaho is the place it dies, whether by the Supreme Court of the state of Idaho, which is over here to my left, or whether it's by Eric Garland's Department of Justice suit, which I really don't want to, because the Department of Justice suit doesn't actually address the issue of bodily autonomy. It goes around it, which is actually what the ruling class wants. I would so much prefer that the Supreme Court of the state of Idaho shoot down Idaho's abortion ban on the grounds of bodily autonomy and individual sovereignty, simply because that ends the debate forever, because it's constitutionally enshrined. Okay. Pro-life versus pro-life versus pro-life. How many different kinds of pro-life are there? You know, are we looking at pro-life forced birth? Are we talking about pro-life anti-war? Are we talking about pro-life feed the orphans and feed those children in foster care? You know, pro-life. What is pro-life in the United States today? It is a term. It is a combination of words that has been co-opted, compromised, stolen, and abused for the purpose of propaganda here in the United States. We all know what we want it to be. We want it to be happy children playing in the parks, much like the park I am sitting in right now. That's what we want pro-life to be. And not just here in the United States, but everywhere around the world. Yes, James, abortion tourism will become a thing again. Abortion tourism's always been a thing, always will be. You know, back 1820 when they first started the anti-abortion laws in Connecticut of all things, Griswold versus it. Married couples can't use abortion anyway. Connecticut's been the forefront of all of this eugenics programs, the forefront of all of these progressive ideas, including eugenics. But yeah, abortion tourism will become a thing again. And again, that will be only allowed to those who are wealthy, those who are rich. Again, why it needs to die here, right now. Mike, we started a worldwide movement with eugenics. We ended a worldwide war. This was World War II, folks, condemning our own philosophy and transferring blame to the losers. Okay? The eugenics programs that were going on globally, mind you, in 1930, 1940, just before the war started off. Okay? Germany was not the only ones using eugenics. They were not the only ones putting undesirables in camps and in prisons, doing forced sterilizations. Starting in 1880, we were running sterilization programs in the insane asylums that men committed their wives to for reading too much. Yes. Yes. Okay. Now, flight a year. Well, California is going to be doing it. They're using all of that extra tax money, getting taxed to California rates, taxing people who are leaving California, you know, in order to continue to provide health care for, you know, women who are doing it. Yes, we are. Parents are authorizing sterilization of children with neurodiversity issues, denying them their right to procreate should they choose to. We are still running a eugenics program. It's just not as state sponsored as it once was. We still have doctors suggesting to parents, you know, that their child be sterilized for one reason or another. You know, I have several friends that have chosen the voluntary, mind you, the voluntary antinatalism route of refusing to have children of their own simply because they realize the likelihood of transferring genetically birth defects into their own children. Oh, damn. Yep, the border camps. Yes, they are doing sterilization at the border camps. In violation, you know. Okay, let's get back to the natural law argument. Okay. 9th Amendment, 10th Amendment, both of those reintroduced natural law into the Constitution of the United States, saying that there are unenumerated rights to which are reserved to the people that can be claimed at any given time. and the states, the people of the states, can reserve unto themselves powers to prevent the states from assuming those powers, or preventing the federal government from assuming those powers. Okay, by preventing those institutions from taking on those powers themselves, we reserve those rights to the people. And yes, James, it is a human rights violation, 100%, and it is happening, and the United States is doing it. Yes, we are war criminals. Everybody who listens to my podcast understands that already. Not all of us, unfortunately, as a collective. Yeah, that hurts, man. It hurts the pride a lot. Okay, now natural rights. When the Federalists forced the Bill of Rights to be introduced into the Constitution as the amendments, Bills 1 through 10, okay, the Bill of Rights, okay, it reintroduced natural law. Now, the thing about natural law is, what are the natural rights? The natural rights of humanity are the negative rights. That is, those rights you can secure for yourself and preserve for yourself. And if anybody violates them, it requires an effort upon their part. Your right to life. Okay? You can't be murdered. Your right to shelter. It can't be taken from you. Your right to liberty. You can't be placed in a cage. Okay? Your right to reproductive choice. The state cannot take from you your ability to reproduce, to pass on your genetic lineage. These are things that are considered natural rights. They are negative rights. Okay? The negative rights. The rights that are preserved unto you simply by the fact nobody does anything. Okay? All they have to do is mind their own business, and your rights are preserved. The issue is when somebody comes along and tries to take those rights. Who is there to defend those rights when some other body comes to take those rights from you? Okay, now mind you, the individual, someone else cannot come up to you and murder you. Okay? Even the collective of the individuals cannot delegate to the state the power to come unto you and take your life. That is what natural law is. And here's the issue where it comes to abortion, specifically with regard to natural law and natural rights. Your natural right cannot impose a burden on another. Okay? Let's read that again. Your natural right to life cannot impose a burden upon another individual. Where this comes into play with regards to the fetus. Okay? This is not a moral argument, mind you. This is strictly an ethical argument. Your natural right to life cannot place a burden on the mother. As long as the mother is required to breathe and eat for the fetus that she is carrying, that fetus does not have a natural law negative right to life. And it is not up to us to dictate morality. This is the ethics of the founding of the United States. Thank you, Brandy. I appreciate that. And this is something here you bring up, Mike. Herbert Spencer, Malcolm X. Okay, I'm running into bandwidth issues here, so I'm getting a little bit choppy. Welcome to the fact that we got so many people sitting down here at the Capitol steps today for this event. Hopefully everything's going through here. Herbert Spencer and Malcolm X both had ethical positions in defense of natural rights. The U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, is the ethical position on the defense of natural rights, specifically the 9th and 10th Amendments, defense of natural rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as signed by the United Nations in 1945 or 1946, defense of natural rights, Thomas Aquinas. Matter of fact, the Chinese ambassador to the UN in that particular year objected to the emphasis of Thomas Aquinas and the natural law simply because it was a Western dialectual approach to natural rights rather than an Eastern. They still signed it. This is an interesting specific here, Mike. See if I can actually get it to stick here for a bit. The right to ignore the state and fight the state spring from the same well. This is our natural rights. The right to defend ourselves against theft of consent, about violation of our rights. Okay, the right to ignore the state, the right to fight the state. Yeah, James, agreed. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was not ratified by the United States. Ironically, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, worked tirelessly in order to get it passed to the United Nations while she was the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations following World War II. Worked tirelessly to make that happen. Okay? Remember, folks, natural rights. That's really what we're all about. Your body, your choice, your consequences. Without the state influencing by either incentivizing or disincentivizing through coercive force or through the theft of consent and resources of other individuals. Okay. It's nearly an hour. I'm running out of bandwidth. I'm running out of battery. Love you guys. I'm going to see you next week. You have a fantastic time. No representation. This is an interesting one. No representation, no taxation. Okay. Up until 1920, when we were given the universal protection of women's rights. Okay? Universal protection of women's rights. Let me rephrase that, because in 1920, we didn't actually give women rights. We gave women the vote. We gave women suffrage. Many states were still treating women as property clear up until the 1970s. Okay? This is one of the reasons why it is so important to make sure that the languaging in our laws represent all people, all citizens of the United States, all citizens of the world, as well as all residents of each and every individual state. Yeah, she drunk. Okay, you guys take care of yourself. I'll see you next week. Family, friends, community. Remember, folks, as long as you got those three, you can make anything happen. You have a fabulous day and enjoy.